Hey, the only reason that you're a citizen of the United States is that someone along your ancestral line was born in the United States. That's birthright citizenship. I feel like a lot of people don't fucking know what birthright citizenship is. And it's literally if you're born on US soil, you are an American citizen. You are an American citizen if you're born on US soil. That includes military bases around the world. If you're born on a military base in Afghanistan, you're a United States citizen. You're on a military base in Afghanistan. Now, a lot of people don't fucking know that. And when I got on this app in January and told you that Donald Trump is trying to end birthright citizenship, y'all were in the comments telling me I am making shit up, I'm fear-mongering on this, that, the third. Donald Trump just ended birthright citizenship, and the Supreme Court sided with him. They came down with the decision today, 6-3 along ideological lines, of course, in a conservative court, saying that Donald Trump can essentially not use birthright citizenship in some parts of the country and not in others, which that's a constitutional right. You can't fucking do that. So yeah, we just ended birthright citizenship in the United States. You know he's going to use this to traffic people of color, people who have different religions, people with different political ideologies, his political opponents. He just ended birthright citizenship. It hasn't even been, it's been like just at 6 months since he's been in office, and he ended birthright citizenship. Thanks to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a fucking joke. Have a good day.
Breaking news, the Supreme Court just made a major landmark decision allowing Trump to restrict birthright citizenship in some parts of the country. In January, Trump signed an executive order essentially stripping birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment from people who were born in the United States to two undocumented parents. Various organizations immediately filed federal lawsuits, and judges all over the country slapped injunctions basically stripping his ability to enforce it. Trump then immediately appealed the case all the way up to the Supreme Court, asking them to restrict federal judges' ability to stop him from enforcing these ridiculous executive orders. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court sided with him. Now his executive order will be allowed to go into effect in parts of the country where there weren't any federal injunctions. Now, it's important to remember that this decision did not address whether restricting birthright citizenship was constitutional or not. It only addressed whether a federal judge can block an executive order from essentially going into effect for the entire country rather than parts of it, to which the court said no. But it does allow Trump to redefine birthright citizenship in certain parts of the country for now.
So on day one of Donald Trump's presidency, he issued an executive order. If you are born in the United States and one of your parents is not at least a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, you're not a U.S. citizen. 22 states filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump saying this is illegal. A federal judge agreed and issued a nationwide injunction saying this executive order can't go into effect. And Trump appealed, not whether his ban on birthright citizenship is legal or not. He appealed that a federal judge can't make this nationwide injunction while they're litigating this case out. And the Supreme Court decided with Donald Trump. So they haven't ended birthright citizenship. They didn't make a decision on that. What they have said is, if you are a child born in the United States in one of these 22 states that brought a lawsuit, that injunction continues. You will be considered a U.S. citizen. You will get your benefits as a U.S. citizen, whether it's your birth certificate, your social security number, Medicaid, food stamps, whatever you're entitled to. But if you're a child born in the United States, in any of these other 28 states that did not bring a lawsuit, the Republican states, in 30 days from now, you will not get any benefits. You will not get your birth certificate, presumably, nor a social security number, nor Medicaid, nor food stamps. You won't be considered a U.S. citizen, perhaps even deportable. Baby deportable, imagine. The Supreme Court gave 30 days. So that means nothing happens over the next 30 days. So if you happen to be lucky to be born by July 27th, 2025, you're a U.S. citizen. You don't have to worry about anything. But after July 27th, you have to rely on new litigation that's expected. And they're going to make it a class action and make an injunction for each of those particular litigants, every person who's part of this class action, that Trump's ban on birthright citizenship is illegal until a final decision is made by the Supreme Court of the United States. So now, if you're an undocumented immigrant, even if you're legal on a student visa, and you give birth to a U.S. citizen in one of the non-28 states that joined the original lawsuit, you have to hope that there is a class action lawsuit. You have to know about that class action lawsuit. You have to be smart enough to join that class action lawsuit in order for your child to be considered a U.S. citizen until the U.S. Supreme Court makes a decision on Trump's birthright citizenship ban. The Supreme Court just made a decision on birthright citizenship, but it's not what you think. The decision was about judicial power, not birthright citizenship. Trump's day one executive order said no citizenship for any baby born in the United States unless one of those parents is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. Lower courts shut it down everywhere. They gave nationwide injunctions saying this is illegal. The Supreme Court said to the federal judge, hang on, you can't block a policy everywhere. You could only block a policy for those people who sued. That means in 22 states who sued, Trump's birthright citizenship ban is still blocked. But for those who are born outside of those 22 states, the ban can start after July 27th unless there's a new lawsuit for those 28 states. Expect new class action lawsuits that'll cover those 28 states. But if you give birth in one of those 28 states, you have to know to join the class action lawsuit, or your child's not a U.S. citizen.
Okay, so hidden in one of today's Supreme Court decisions is a provision that could irreversibly change the course of American history, and nobody's talking about it. So let me put my law degree to good use and break it down for you. Hidden in the court's decision on Trump's birthright citizenship executive order is the following line, where the majority says, no one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law forbids the judiciary from doing so. So in layman's terms, what the court is saying here is that while the president should, in theory, follow the law and respect the Constitution, if he doesn't do that, the courts cannot hold him accountable. The courts have historically been the referee on executive power, and they call a foul when the president crosses the line. But this Supreme Court is saying that that's not their role anymore. So if we follow the logic of this precedent, the Constitution is dead letter law to the president if he decides he'd rather not follow it. This was the cherry on top of the court this term laying the groundwork of a de facto presidential dictatorship, where the president is immune from the law, cannot be held accountable by the courts, and now at this point, the Constitution is more of a guiding principle than an actual binding document. The mainstream media and legal scholars are playing this down because this is so counter to everything we've ever been taught about the American government and the principles of law, it's difficult to wrap your mind around. There's a reason the court waited to release this as one of their last decisions, and it's because they know that it's controversial to give the president carte blanche to do whatever he wants and to disempower any other court from stopping him. Democracy is fragile, more fragile in this country than a lot of us realize, and I hope it's not too late before everybody starts paying attention and calling out these abuses of power.
I've been told that I'm pretty good at explaining how the 14th Amendment in the United States Constitution only applies to children of lawful permanent residents and children of U.S. citizens. So if you actually read Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, it reads, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So the 14th Amendment lays out two conditions that you must fulfill in order to qualify for birthright citizenship. One, being born in the United States, and two, being subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So obviously everyone knows what it means to be born inside the United States, but what does it mean to be, quote, subject to the jurisdiction thereof? It's obviously not referring to location, as the first phrase in that, born in the United States, is already establishing location. It's establishing jurisdiction on you as a person. So there are certain laws that only U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents have to follow. Some of them are paying taxes, some of them are age of consent laws, and there's a plethora of other laws that only U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents have to follow when outside the United States. Illegal aliens and people on temporary visas do not have to follow these laws. They do not have to pay taxes on their worldwide income when they're living outside the United States. So this is what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means. It means the U.S. authority has full authority over you, even if you're not in the United States. The 14th Amendment was not written to give illegal aliens citizenship. The 14th Amendment was written to give children of freed slaves U.S. citizenship. This is supported by the words of the writer of the Birthright Citizenship Clause, Senator Jacob M. Howard of Michigan. At the time, it was pretty clear in English that this wording excluded foreigners, aliens who belong to families of ambassadors and foreign ministers, and Indians. and foreign combatants, such as an invading army. Never in U.S. history has the Supreme Court ruled on giving illegal aliens U.S. citizenship. The only time they have ruled on giving foreigners U.S. citizenship was in the Supreme Court case, the United States versus Wong Kim Ark, in which case Wong Kim Ark had a permanent residence in the United States. So this can only arguably mean giving U.S. citizenship to children of permanent residents. And this is further supported in the fact that the United States versus Wong Kim Ark was in 1897. And in the year 1924 was the year the United States, by an act of Congress, granted Indians who were born on U.S. soil or tribal lands, does not matter, U.S. citizenship. So if the Supreme Court case, the United States versus Wong Kim Ark, were to give illegal aliens and everyone born on U.S. soil U.S. citizenship, why was an act of Congress necessary to give Indians U.S. citizenship in 1924?
Birthright citizenship is not over. It's being left up to the states, basically. And the ruling that the Supreme Court had is going to lead to much worse outcomes. But I want to explain it in personal terms because people just keep reiterating the legal terms and it's getting muddled. The courts are not allowed to block executive orders across the nation, which means if you disagree, you have to fight it individually. And if you're not personally involved in the suit and you are elsewhere, you have to follow the executive order. A good example of this is if Trump decides to drop an executive order that limits people's ability to vote, or takes your guns away, or limits the ability to have a right to marriage. You have to follow that executive order unless you are involved in a suit that you file or get involved in with a bunch of other people to file. That decision is on executive orders as a whole, which is very bad, but specifically the birthright citizenship has been put on stay for 30 days, meaning it will not be enacted until 30 days from now. So everyone who will be affected by this has 30 days to go to court or go to their district and have the state fight for them. As of recording this video, the Supreme Court has not voted on whether the executive order regarding birthright citizenship is unconstitutional or not. So the ruling was on executive orders as a whole. The birthright citizenship one has not been voted on whether it's unconstitutional or not, and there's no timeline for when or if they decide that it is or not. So as of right now, even though this ruling was on executive orders as a whole, the main important point that people are focusing on is birthright citizenship. And as of right now, it will go into effect in 30 days. And if you are in a state that is not going to try and block it, you are in trouble. This is a step towards authoritarianism. It is stripping our rights away little by little. We may not have ended birthright citizenship today, but it is arguably on its way. This is what Trump does in his business. Leave it up to the courts. Let's fight it in the courts. And while you're fighting, I'm going to keep moving this way. We can, and he just wants to keep these in litigation. Keep fighting them. That's fine. You guys can stay. But everyone else who's not involved in the suits or can't afford to be in these lawsuits, you have to follow. You have to follow the executive orders. Once there's less of you and we've dwindled this group down to a smaller demographic, then we'll just make something else. We'll make a new rule, a new executive order, a new Supreme Court ruling that then gets the rest of you out. That's how this works. That's the stripping little by little.
The USA has just banned birthright citizenship, at least in these 28 states starting on July 26th. In the 6-3 court ruling, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Donald Trump's ban on birthright citizenship. Now, the reason why it's not the whole country is because these states right here, the ones that are not in red, currently have pending litigations and lawsuits against Donald Trump. But regardless, starting July 26th, if you're born in any of these states in the red, you are not eligible for birthright citizenship. So if you plan on having kids or are going to have a kid in the near future, rethink where you're going to give birth. My next message is for Latinos for Trump. We all know that many of you guys are recipients and beneficiaries of birthright citizenship. Many, if not most, Latinos for Trump have undocumented family members or undocumented parents. Although this might not affect you right now, you're next on the chopping block. But regardless, maybe the USA has the president it deserves. And I hope that everybody that voted for that man is happy for what they voted for. I'm just genuinely grateful and happy that I don't live in the US. But anyways, Let me know what you guys think.